Hi, I'm Cody.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Alex, and we're here with BFE Adventures, and today we're going to give you guys a little once-over and a review of our current riding selection. So we're going to be comparing the R1200 GSs, as you can tell, and the KTM 1190 Super Adventure. Or just the Adventure? Is it Super?
Adventure R.
Adventure R, perfect. So Cody, you definitely have had your bike the longest, so why don't you give us an overall view, where you're coming from, and compare it and let us know what you think overall.
So overall, if you're looking for a bike that will do pretty much any task you ask it, you cannot make a better choice than the GS Adventure. It's got excellent handling thanks to the boxer engine, really low center of gravity. It's also got telelever front suspension, so when you're going into corners, the nose doesn't dive on you. A lot better handling through the corners. Bikes previously, I started out in the adventure world on a V-Strom 650 that was a really good entry, but it was lacking in a lot of things that I wanted out of a bike. It was a little underpowered, suspension was pretty awful, but it was also just a good usable bike that opened me up to bigger and better things. So I love this bike. I mean, other than getting a newer GS, I don't think I could ask for anything better for what I need right now.
That's great. Okay, so Pogo, what do you think about your overall?
2014 KTM Adventure R 1190. Overall, I've had the bike for three and a half years, almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Handling wise, ergonomic wise, stuff like that. A little more top heavy than say the GS 1200 due to V-twin kind of being up a little higher in the frame. This is the R model, so it's got off-road suspension. Does do fairly well on road. Nothing like these, obviously, center of gravity's higher. The bike pretty much will do everything the GS will. The only problem is on highway speeds around, when you start getting up around 90s, you'll notice the front end will start to get a little light because of the skinny front tire. This is a 21/18 setup, same as a dirt bike, so it's not as street oriented as these two bikes, but overall, as long as you're smart about riding it, you're gonna love it.
Awesome. And there's nothing I can say about the R1200 that Cody hasn't already said. I will say I'm coming from a Super Tenere, so I think the end of this discussion will be us kind of comparing each other's bikes and other things that we've had in the past. But the one thing I love about the GS overall is the comfort. I mean, that's what it was made for, and that's obvious. Everything, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but everything about it feels softer than, for example, Jeff's 1190. The power is smoother and softer. The seat is a lot more comfy. I have an aftermarket seat on here, but overall, it's a softer bike, a more comfy, cushiony ride. Just like Jeff was describing with the wheels, this is a 1917 setup, isn't that what it is? A 1918?
It's a 1917.
1917. And overall, off-road, I don't think it hinders it as much as you would think. Definitely this is going to feel way more like a dirt bike when you're ripping it off-road. But as you'll be able to tell from some of the clips we share here, the GSs can get down off-road as well. Coming from the Super Tenere, the Yamaha 1200, the power is, I would say, similar. I think the GS has a little more. When I had the Super Tenere, me and Cody would race, and I mean, we were laughing. It was laughable how close it was. We'd race to 100. Yeah, and I mean, it was within inches at 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, they're really close. Suspension-wise, though, when you're off-road, you don't notice a whole lot of difference between the Super Tenere and the GS. In my opinion, the ground clearance is a little more apparent, or it feels like it. But on-road, the GS is definitely, it's a harder bike in a good way. Like, this is the electronic suspension. Honestly, I just ride it in normal mode most of the time, but it seems to be a little stiffer. Like Cody was talking about the telelever front suspension, you don't have any dive when you hit the front brakes going into a corner. That's also nice. And while I'm talking, I'll just keep talking about comparing it to Jeff's 1190. explaining the difference between the two, I'll say it again, exactly what I told Jeff the first time I rode his after getting off this. Everything on this feels harder. The suspension's stiffer, it feels like a dirt bike, the seat's a little skinnier, the seat's a little harder, the hand grips are a little smaller.
The throttle's much sharper.
Yeah, everything is sharper and harder and more aggressive. This is definitely a bike that wants to be ridden hard. And you'll also see in some video clips of when you give this thing gas and you're going less than 70, the front end's going to get light on you. It's just a very aggressive motorcycle in a good way. That's enough for me. What do you think comparing them all?
I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, it really depends what you want to do. If you're coming from a more dirt bike oriented background and you like power and you like being able to play off-road, I feel like this is going to be something that's going to fit you a little better. But if you want the best all-around bike, I think one of those over this for sure.
Okay. What do you think, Cody?
When you're trying to decide between these, you really have to ask yourself what you're truly going to be doing with it. I know a lot of us have these fantasies of, 2 weeks of never seeing civilization and we're going through super rocky areas, but for 90% of us, that's just not a real situation. Most of us are going to be like us, riding an hour on the highway to get to good off-road spots, or commuting back and forth to work, or any mixture of that kind of thing, where maybe some street bias will help make those highway miles a lot easier and smoother and leave you more fresh for when you get to the off-road. But when you do get off-road, you're going to want to be on this one. I mean, you're talking a machine that's 80 to 100 pounds lighter than ours and 50 to 60 more horsepower. It's huge difference. Not that you really ever need all that horsepower, but it's there when you want it.
And it's awesome when you get it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not to say that a bike like this, our first year that I owned this, we took a trip to Colorado, all three of us. He was on a Super Tenere at the time. He was on the GS. I was on this, fairly new to adventure bike riding. Our first day we did 980 miles.
Yeah, just under an iron butt. Yeah.
So just to get to Colorado from St. Louis. This bike did it fine. Obviously the fuel capacity on this isn't that. This is 6.4. Those are what, 8?
Almost 9.
Almost 9, yeah.
So we had to stop a little more for fuel for me and his Super Tenere at the time. But this does fine on the highway. It'll make a long haul. But I'll tell you right now, you're going to want some monkey butt powder at the end, because your butt is not going to be happy after riding on this seat for 16 hours a day or whatever it is.
Yep.
On that, I would like to speak to that whole trip. I think just kind of I think we should give our overall impressions of the bikes after that. So I can only talk about the Super Tenere, but since I already mentioned it, I'll bring it up again. On the trip out there, that is a road-worthy bike. I mean, the Tenere, it can go off-road, but I've taken it way out here. We're down a big long track out in the middle of a lake, up and down hills. I've taken the Super Tenere out where we are right now. It'll do it, but I will say on the highway it was comfy. It was very comfy, and that's where it likes to be. It's got a really tall 6th gear. It has no problem cruising at 90 miles an hour, and we took it up the sides of mountains in Colorado. We started doing the backcountry discovery route. After I tore the side case off my Super Tenere, it slowed us down a little bit. It rained on us and it was super muddy. So I will say, if you have a Super Tenere or you're going to get one, go ahead and plan on aftermarket luggage, because the stock stuff, I turned the key out of the top box as soon as I got home, and I tore the side case completely off and obliterated it. We had to strap it to the back of Cody's GS. Yeah. So, but speaking of that, maintenance-wise on the Super Tenere, I put about 15,000 miles on mine, and the only thing I ever did was check the final drive oil and change the engine oil. I mean, that was it. It was easy. You kind of already gave your thoughts on Colorado, huh?
A little bit, yeah. I will say this: anybody who has a bike like this, or maybe even that, I don't know. My first choice of luggage was SW Motec hard bags and racks for this. That was $1,000 wasted down the drain, one trip. I never laid my bike down at speeds. Obviously, I'm a short rider, so I do fall.
Falls
It's
a lot.
true. It's true. But most of the time, it's at a dead stop when I do it. Well,
you got these.
in Colorado a few times, did fall. And the racks, the way they attach to this bike, are on little pivot points that just kind of hook over. They don't even latch. It bent those They were pretty much junk by the time I got home, and I dropped it, what, two
Maybe
times?
twice, yeah.
While we were there,
At a
and
dead
like
stop.
I said,
Yeah.
dead stop. Called SW Motec, and they didn't want to do anything about it. They said it was wrecked at speed. Clearly it wasn't, because obviously I would expect stuff to break like that. But yeah, as soon as we got home, I took that $1,000 worth of luggage, I threw it in the trash. So keep that in mind. If you ever decide to go SW Motec luggage, they're not going to help you if something goes wrong. They wouldn't even just help me out and sell me some racks to fix the issue. You know, the welds broke on them, real cheap, flimsy, wouldn't make one trip, and they wouldn't make it right. So
Yeah.
whatever is what it is. Moved on now. Got some Moscow Moto soft luggage and Touratech racks on here now, so it's good and solid.
Looking back on the Colorado trip, that really opened my eyes to what these bikes are capable of and how easy they can be to ride off-road once you get, just familiar with their characteristics. They're big and heavy, sometimes a little intimidating, but anything over, 1 or 2 miles an hour, just so you're balanced, they will plow up anything really that you put them up against. We were up in the mountains with, guys on much smaller bikes, 4x4 vehicles that had a lot more traction than we did, but we were right there up in high elevation. They did suffer a little bit on power, definitely. It was nice to come back into the plains at low elevation and realize that my bike actually had speed again. But overall, it was a really, really good trip. We met some really great people out there that we're still in contact with, so it's all in all a good trip. As far as maintenance goes, it is relatively easy if you're somewhat mechanically inclined. Even if you're not, it can be easy to pick up on. This motorcycle has separate fluids for the engine oil, transmission fluid, and they call it the final drive oil. They all have a regular maintenance interval. I usually change the oil about every 4,000 miles, transmission and final drive about every 8 to 10, just depends on what we're up to. Air filter's super easy to get to, and with the opposed cylinder heads, your spark plugs are right here. Nothing, tank doesn't have to come off, no fairings have to come off. You can have the plugs out of this bike in less than 20 minutes and probably back in another 5 or 10 minutes once you know what you're doing. So overall, really easy to keep doing the maintenance yourself and avoid paying the BMW tax, as they call it. So,
Cody, why don't you explain in practical, real world experience, how do you know how it's great to have the spark plugs that easily accessible?
Yeah, I know. Doing it on the side of the trail, actually. A couple weeks ago, we were out doing some fire road kind of riding, and it had been actually raining the morning we were headed out. We didn't really think much of it. We knew the area pretty well, except for this one crossing that everyone else in the group made it through no problem. Everyone else was on much lighter, smaller bikes, I will say, but the bottom was super soft, and the water was already about over the front wheel in depth. When I went in, the BMW took a big gulp of water and pretty much seized the engine right in place. Thankfully, we were able to push it out up onto the creek a little bit and pull the plugs out, cycle the engine over off the starter, blew a bunch of water out of both cylinders, changed the oil on the side of the creek as well.
Did not let the oil go into the
no,
creek.
we were responsible.
Yep. We got pictures, videos, we can prove it.
We were responsible about that, but ended up riding the bike home. It didn't like being ridden home, but here I am today and didn't really seem to have any ill effects on it. Time will tell, but I think it pretty much got away unscathed from that, which is incredible to say the least. Yeah, I think I just got really lucky.
Jeff, you have any comments on the maintenance on the KTM?
Deep pockets. Like Cody's bike, if you hydrolock the thing at all like that, you may as well call AAA, because you're not taking this bike apart on the gravel lot to pull plugs out of this thing. It's kind of a maintenance heavy bike, wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah.
I mean,
I change the oil probably more than you should. I change the oil about every 3,000. But again, oil change isn't cheap either. That's over $100 every oil change. It's 4 quarts full synthetic oil. Filter, there's 2 screens in it you're supposed to clean every time. Even changing the air filter, cleaning the air filter is not easy to do. You got to take half the bike apart to do it. On this one, you got to take these upper crash bars completely loose, down here, up there, pull all the fairings off, pull the seat off, pull the tank off, and then I can actually show you. Alex, I don't know if you want to wait till the end of the video or whatever, but you can grab it and I can pull this off, show them where the air filter's at. Obviously this is chain driven, so it doesn't have final drive stuff like that, so there's chain maintenance, got to keep it clean, lube. Brake wise, I have 20,000 miles on this. I'm pretty hard on the brakes. I mean, I do rolling burnouts, we ride twisties pretty hard. I mean, I'm hard on brakes, there's no doubt about it. So my front rotors are warped. The rear one, I mean, obviously everything's full floating on this, but the rear one's so loose it needs to be replaced. So, you know, if you go to price it, I'm gonna be $1,000 in the brakes all the way around this with rotors and pads. So just keep that in mind. But you know, KTM, keep taking money, right?
Yeah,
That's the way they say.
With great power comes great maintenance.
But I'm you know, as far as like other than that, I have a slip-on exhaust on this. This thing has been a little bit of a pain in the butt to tune for me. I have a programmer on it. I do have a power commander on it. It has been dyno tuned in regular street mode. With the programmer, this made 135 horsepower to the wheel. That's not even in sport mode. So,
It's got a lot of ponies.
I don't know. And then I do have, you know, some emissions delete stuff on this. Rottweiler performance. I changed the intake on it because the stock intake isn't any good. So right out of the gate, if you buy this bike, make sure it's got an aftermarket intake. If it's been used already, or you're gonna ingest some dirt into your intake, stuff like that. Skid plate that comes on it for being an off-road model is a little plastic piece of crap. So you're gonna have to get a skid plate right out of the gate too. So you buy the bike, you spend $14,000 which you can't buy these new anymore. But when I did, it was a leftover 14 model, brand new. You gotta spend a couple $100 on a skid plate, couple $100 on an intake. Just stuff to prevent you from tearing the bike up. I mean, comes with plastic hand guards. I put aluminum, obviously Cycers on there. All the protection you could pretty much get, all the case covers. This does have a recluse clutch in it. Me being a shorter guy, there's times where I can't put my feet down, depending on the angle of the ground or whatever, I'd fall over. So I found the recluse makes it a little easier for me to focus on my line. I can keep it in second gear, putt 1 or 2 miles an hour, and it'll slip just enough for me to keep moving. Still have all the traction, all the power. It doesn't stall. You don't have to worry about working the clutch. If you gotta get off real quick to dab a foot and your hand comes off the clutch lever, it was a lifesaver for me. It helped a lot. I think a lot of guys will say, well, how does the clutch help you, you know, ride or pick a line better? It did for me. So don't let anybody tell you different. But right there, that's another $800 option.
Yeah.
So I've changed brake fluid 2 times on this. I've flushed it on this thing. I don't even know what it is in the manual. I haven't looked. I don't know how often you're supposed to do it, but I've flushed it twice and it's already dirty again. Cody's never done his. His is still clean on the Beamer, so I don't know. It's a BMW. You can't go wrong with it. But you know,
Overall, I think it's a winner no matter what bike you pick out of here. All of the manufacturers in the adventure category are stepping their game up so much. It is unbelievable. But if you guys have any questions do you guys have any other final thoughts?
I don't think so.
I think the main thing to take away from this is no matter what bike you pick, it really comes down to the rider as far as what you want to do off-road. There are guys everywhere on pieces of crap bikes with burning oil, all kinds of issues that will ride circles around your guy that just bought every Klim and Touratech and just spent $2,000 on an Aero Stitch suit.
Right.
Some guy will come out and totally blow him out of the water. So don't think you have to spend a ton of money to get into the adventure world or just have fun. It can be done on the cheap for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, your V-Strom is a perfect example. You took it around the country for a month and had it all over the place.
That was a $3,000 bike that took me pretty much from the Canadian border to the Mexican border and everywhere in between. Never missed a second. That bike never hiccuped one bit.
Yeah, you hit California, everything in that trip.
Yep.
Yeah. And my first adventure bike was a $3,000 Buell Ulysses, and I still miss that bike.
Let's not talk about that.
There was an electrical gremlin that really slowed down our Tennessee trip. We're gonna go make up for that next week or next month. But anyway, parting thoughts, or if you guys have any questions, comments about anything, feel free to comment below in the video or message us directly. Find us on Facebook, BFE Adventures. You can check us out. Our website is advandbfe.com. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, feel free to contact us or reach out, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yep.
All right, take care, guys.